Hey everyone, guess what?
What?
Paradise After Dark will be featured in the month of November in the True Crime Calendar.
Wait, there's a true crime calendar?
Yes, and you can order it on podcastcalendars.com. Use our promo code PARADISE for 10% off.
Paradise for 10% off. Cool, we get November?
Yep.
That's an awesome month. You know what? That's a very special month. You want to know why?
Why?
Because you were born in that month.
That's true.
Nice.
Podcastcalendars.com. Use code PARADISE.
I'm Raven Rollins, and this is my Southern True Crime podcast where I discuss cases from my former hometown. Ada, Oklahoma paints itself as an average community, but its history of murder and corruption runs deeper than any story has ever told. You'll hear plenty of special guests, including authors and experts in their fields, who visit with me on each episode, as well as other cases in the southern states. With notorious and unknown cases alike, every victim sees the light on my show. This is Sirens, a true crime podcast.
Hi everyone.
Hello.
I'm Lauren.
I am Ken.
And this is Paradise After Dark.
Dark.
Paradise After Dark is an independent podcast covering true crime,
Unsolved mysteries,
missing people,
urban legends,
and strange places. If you'd like to support our little show and get early and ad-free episodes, plus extra Paradise After Dark content, sign up for our Patreon at patreon.com/Palmahawk Media. That's PALMAHAWK Media.
And also be sure to check out our website, paradiseafterdark.com.
On the website, you'll find links to all of our episodes, even the archived episodes, our mailing list, merch store, links to our social medias, and of course our Patreon.
And on the website, we also have a little virtual tip jar there. So if you want to help out the show, you just swing by there, drop some coins in the tip jar, and we'll give you a shout out.
I also need to give a shout out to one of our patrons, Ashley Potts, as she has sort of joined the Paradise After Dark team as a research assistant. And this is one of the cases that Ashley really put a lot of time and effort into helping me research. So, yay for Ashley.
Yay, Ashley.
So, Ken, what are we talking about tonight?
Tonight we're talking about a child that goes missing. And one of the issues I have with this missing child is it involves a parent involvement in the child's disappearance. Also, it's not like a 2-year-old child that really hasn't developed the mindset to understand what's going on. Tonight, we're talking about a young child, but yet 6 years old. And that to me is old enough to know kind of what's going on. So with that, you want to kind of start us off, Lauren?
On the morning of May 11th, 2011, Jim Pitzen dropped his 6-year-old son, Timothy, who was in kindergarten, off at Greenman Elementary School in Aurora, Illinois. When he went to fetch him when school was over later that afternoon, Timothy wasn't there. Shortly after Jim dropped him off, his mother, Amy, arrived and signed him out of school, stating there was a family emergency. There was no family emergency. Security footage shows them leaving the school at around 8:30 a.m. By the time Jim arrived at the school, Amy and Timothy were already long gone. Jim tried to call Amy on her cell phone and at work but got no answer. Her cell was going straight to voicemail. The following morning, he reported his wife and son missing.
Timmothy Pitzen was born October 18th of 2004 in Aurora, Illinois, to parents James, otherwise known as Jim Pitzen, and Amy Joan Marie Fry-Pitzen. Now, Tim was an only child in what some would call actually sort of a miracle child. The Pitzens lived in Aurora, Illinois, and by all accounts, were an average family. Tim was described as an extroverted and energetic, happy, playful child. Quote, get along with everybody, running down the street, always happy, always fun to be around. Always looking for the next adventure, Jim Pitzen told Crime Watch Daily in 2017.
Amy's family stated she had a history of mental illness, mainly depression. Amy's sister Kara says Amy spent her life searching for something that would make her happy. In her first suicide attempt, before she met Jim, she parked her car on some train tracks, reconsidering only at the last minute. At that time, she checked herself into a psychiatric ward for nearly a week and was prescribed medication and counseling. In 2003, Amy was driving home from a job interview and was overcome with anxiety and a sense of hopelessness. Amy took some pills and was sitting on the edge of a steep embankment. She passed out and fell 30 feet down the embankment, but obviously she survived. Jim told CNN he thought that Amy's depression would improve once she was in a healthy relationship. Amy didn't always take her meds, so she would have big highs and big lows. She would become emotional and would yell anytime Jim asked her about taking her medication.
And one thing about the mental health issues and depression that people maybe don't understand, and I'm kind of learning myself as we sort of progress in time doing these podcasts and looking into them, it's not about the healthy relationship. It's not about the happiness. When you're depressed, there's not really a fix, so even if things are good, most people that fight depression understand that it's not necessarily the other person's fault. I mean, would you agree, Lauren?
I think what you're trying to say is it's not outside factors.
Correct. Yes, what I mean. Like I said,
Yeah.
He said that he thought she would be happier once she was in a happy relationship.
Yeah, no, depression is a mental illness, and it doesn't matter, as we've seen with the recent suicides that we've seen in celebrities,
it comes in all shapes, sizes, and forms. And, it's one of those, and I'm really happy to see a lot of attention starting to come to the mental health issues and depression issues. And people are actually finally starting to get some help that they need. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to go off track there, but sometimes I get a little crazy. So let's talk about Jim Pitzen. Now, he was born and raised in Clinton, Iowa. And Amy and Jim met at a party in Iowa, and they began dating long distance. Amy originally did not want children. She was worried that she would pass along her mental illness. Now, Jim, he had survived a bout with Hodgkin's lymphoma when he was 20, and he mistakenly believed that he was actually sterile, hence why this was sort of a miracle child to them. Soon, Amy becomes pregnant with Timothy. Now, Amy had been married 3 times before, but this was Jim's first marriage. And in 2004, Jim and Amy married shortly before Timothy's birth. They looked at the pregnancy, like I said, as a miracle and a sign that this was meant to happen. He was named after Amy's brother who had died at birth, but they added an extra M to distinguish the two between the original Timothy and this Timothy. So
yes, the Timothy we're discussing is Timmothy.
Correct.
Amy was described by friends and family as a loving mother. She seemed to truly embrace motherhood, planning trips for the family, playing in the yard with her son. Photos and home videos of the family show them looking happy, especially Timothy. But it appeared as if Jim and Amy had a rocky marriage. The couple had been fighting in the weeks leading up to the day that Amy and Timothy went missing. Some would say they had been fighting for most of their 7-year marriage. Jim would later tell People magazine that he had no clue what was coming. They nearly divorced in 2008 when Jim discovered text messages between Amy and one of her ex-husbands, Robert. Jim told her, "If you want to be with that guy, go be with that guy. We'll get a divorce, and I don't care how much money your dad has, I'll find a way to get custody of Timothy." One of Amy's biggest fears was that Timothy would be taken from her, either in a divorce or because of her mental health. Amy took a trip to the Bahamas the week prior to her disappearance with her best friend. Jim and Amy fought before she left, but when he picked her up from the airport after the trip, it was as if the argument never happened. Amy was known to take off for a couple of hours or longer to clear her head after a fight.
Yeah, so let's talk about the day that Timothy and Amy disappeared. Now, Jim usually drove Timothy to school in the mornings, but on that morning, Amy asked to drive him. Jim was very quick to say no. Jim had refused because the day prior, Amy had been having what the family has described as a vertigo attack. They felt that way because she had felt dizzy and wasn't walking quite right. And because of this, Jim actually insisted on driving Timothy to school, and he actually insisted to drive Amy to work as well. Now, he dropped Timothy off first and then proceeded to drop Amy off at her real estate office where she worked, which is only 3 blocks from Timothy's school. Now, we can only assume based on the timing that Amy must have immediately walked back home to pick up her car and then had headed straight to the school to pick Timothy up. Now, according to the cell phone and iPass, which is the Illinois tollway, those records, Amy drove over 500 miles in 3 days, making stops at all of Timothy's favorite places. Now, the pair were next seen at an auto body shop in LaGrange, Illinois, where Amy dropped off her car and had a shuttle take them to the Brookfield Zoo. This is a very popular zoo in the Chicago area. Now, this obviously being another one of the places that was favorited by Timothy as he loved animals. They were at the zoo from approximately 10:30 a.m. to 3 p.m. when they went back to pick up Amy's car. Now, meanwhile, back at home, at this point, Jim has already discovered that Amy had checked Timothy out of school and that they were gone. Now, he has tried to call her over and over and over, and when he was getting no response from her, he began to call family members to see if anyone had seen his wife or son or if they could get a hold of her. So then the family members began to call Amy that day to no avail.
After Amy picked up her car, she headed 50 miles north to Gurnee, Illinois, where she checked into the Key Lime Cove Water Park Resort. Amy and Timothy are seen on surveillance camera checking into the resort. The next morning, May 12, 2011, Jim reported his wife and son missing. Around 10:30 a.m. that morning, Amy and Timothy are seen again on surveillance cameras checking out of the Key Lime Cove Resort. Amy then drove 170 miles north to the Kalahari Resort, another water park resort in Wisconsin Dells, Wisconsin. Again, she's seen on surveillance video checking into the resort that afternoon and then checking out again the following morning, May 13th, around 10:30 a.m. It's the last images of mother and son together. Up until leaving the Kalahari, the trip seemed to have a purpose. Through cell phone calls, iPass records, and credit card receipts, police have been able to confirm that on Wednesday and Thursday, May 11th and 12th, Amy mostly took main roads, chose logical point-to-point routes, and made good time. After that, Amy appeared to just be driving with no particular destination. After leaving the Kalahari Resort, Amy then heads south again towards the town of Sterling, Illinois. Phone records show she makes phone calls during that drive to her mother and her brother-in-law. This is Jim's brother. There was really no hint of trouble during those calls. She even let Timothy talk to his grandmother. But her brother-in-law stated that while reassuring him that they were fine, Amy said something to the effect of, "Timothy is mine and I can do whatever I want." He described her as being very possessive over her son.
I want to know just how sincere that was, if in fact that actually transpired, or if he was just very upset with her and that's what he heard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because this is his nephew. His brother's very upset. It's his brother's child's missing. So
I mean, it could have been something as simple as like, "Timothy's my son.
Yeah,
I can do whatever. I can do what I want."
Yeah, I've read that, but in certain
or it could have been, "Timothy is mine, and I'm going to do what I want."
It could have been very well exactly what he heard. Exactly.
Aurora police said the cell phone records indicate that the calls were placed from the Sterling, Rock Falls, Illinois area. After those calls, she turned off her phone and tossed it behind a grain storage building off a remote road in Mount Carroll. It was found in 2013, but there were no clues on the phone itself. Amy continued north on Highway 78 and then on to Route 20. That intersection is in Stockton, Illinois. Amy's sister Kara remembers this road as one they traveled as children. According to Kara, they spent a lot of time on Route 20 going back and forth to Dubuque, Iowa, where they visited grandparents and an aunt and uncle. Amy actually lived with their grandparents for a period of time in the 90s, so she had made connections in that area during that time.
So it was not an unfamiliar place to her.
Right.
Okay. You want to just take a quick ad break and then we'll be right back?
Yeah, let's just take a quick break.
Okay, so here is where our worst fears begin, as surveillance cameras later caught Amy alone at a grocery store in Winnebago, which is west of Rockford, around 8 p.m. on the evening of the 13th. Now, at the grocery store, it's important to note that the three things that she purchased there were envelopes, pens, and notebook paper. And then on May 14th, 2011, a housekeeper discovered Amy dead in her hotel room at the Rockford Inn at about 12:30 p.m., having slit her wrist, and in some reports I read they claim that she had cut her own throat as well. Now, Amy had left a note indicating Timothy was safe, and she had left him in the care of unnamed people. But in the note, she also stated that no one would find him. In Rockford, Illinois, where she was found, is just an hour from her home in Aurora, Illinois. Now, something worth noting here is that Timothy was actually taught how to dial 911, and he had an identicard with his fingerprints, name, and picture on it. This is basically to let people know who he is, and if he was to be found, who he belongs to. But this identicard was found in the motel room where Amy had killed herself. Amy's family was informed later that day that Amy had taken her own life in a Rockford motel and that Timothy was missing with absolutely no indication of where he might be.
Yeah, and this is like what you said in the very beginning, that Timothy was a young boy, but he wasn't that young. He knew how to dial 911. He had, an identicard with his information on it. So it's not like in past cases that we've seen a case that circumstances are almost identical, kind of, with Trenton Duckett. He was 2.
Yes.
And his mother took him somewhere, and then she died by suicide, and Trenton has still never been found, but he was 2 years old. Timothy is 6, so he's a little bit more aware of what's going on.
Correct. He was in kindergarten, so it was pretty evident that he knew what was going on. He had some sort of education. He had teachers. He had friends. And so when you get in kindergarten, you kind of know what's going on. So you're absolutely right, Lauren.
On May 19th of 2011, officers used bloodhounds, ATVs, and planes to search the Sterling, Rock Falls area, about 100 miles west of Chicago, where Amy's last cell phone calls were tracked. There was no sign of Timothy. 2 weeks later, police announced they had hired a forensic botany lab to analyze plants and mud found on Amy's SUV. In May of 2012, a private forensics lab in Elgin, Illinois, called Microtrace, released the results after they processed evidence found on Amy Pitzen's SUV. According to police, the results are, based on sediments and plant material, the vehicle was stopped for an unknown period of time on a wide gravel shoulder, gravel road, or short gravel turnout, either adjacent to or just off an asphalt secondary road that had at one time been treated with glass road marking beads. In close proximity to the gravel shoulder or road where the vehicle stopped, it backed into a grassy meadow or field to a spot that is nearly treeless. There are birch and oak trees in the general area, but not directly over or at the spot where the SUV stopped. Both Queen Anne's lace and black mustard plants grown in a row along the border of the field or the shoulder of the road. I find this to be extremely interesting that they can pinpoint this kind of stuff just based on the plant material and gravel and dirt that they found on the SUV.
Well, also the way that the grasses that were impacted underneath the vehicle, which direction they were facing to determine if she backed in or pulled forward over it. So they did a lot of analysis, which is actually pretty impressive. All of this, they were trying to determine where these organisms or these plants are so they can know where to search possibly for Timothy.
Well, in addition, there is no corn growing in or adjacent to the spot where the SUV stopped, nor is there any indication that the area has been used for agriculture in the recent past. Instead, the evidence strongly suggests that grasses have been the only major plants growing in the immediate area, which leads scientists to believe that it is a meadow and not, for example, a field that had once been farmland and not recently sown. Forensic results indicate that the grass was not cut, which helps rule out rural residential lawns or a park. There is also a strong likelihood that there is a pond, small stream, or creek in the area. Scientists further believe that the meadow is most likely in northwestern Illinois, with Lee and Whiteside counties as the most likely location. However, areas in Carroll, Ogle, Stevenson, and Winnebago counties cannot be ruled out. Microtrace has since performed other tests, but has not been able to further narrow down the 6-county area, an area much too large for police to conduct ground searches.
But you got to applaud law enforcement for making this effort. And I'm quite certain in some of the things that I read that they did, in fact, look at some of the areas that they thought pretty much fit this description, as heavily as possible. After Amy's death in August of 2011, investigators discovered that Amy had a secret Yahoo email account, and FBI profilers thought she may have used the email to help plan her actions leading up to her suicide and the disappearance of her son, Timothy. But the lead investigator in the case, Detective Trent Brine, told the Chicago Tribune that the account had absolutely nothing to do with Timothy's disappearance, and a lot of it was just spam. But detectives were not able to get records of Amy's deleted emails because Yahoo does not maintain those records. So they couldn't go back and see what had previously been sent or deleted if she was trying to cover her tracks. And the examination of Amy's iPass revealed 2 earlier, unexplained trips to the region of West Chicago, but nothing that shed any light on Timothy's disappearance.
So I think that this is very telling. Why had Amy been in this area before? And she hadn't told any family or friends about these prior trips. And who was she meeting there? Who did she know there?
Well, my first thoughts were that she may be having an affair, but I almost feel as though there may have been some premeditation to her actions here.
What do you mean by premeditation?
Maybe she was visiting a family to leave Timothy with, kind of setting the scene the whole time.
Well, there's been sightings of Timothy throughout the years. On December 28, 2011, police investigated reports that Timothy was sighted at a Denny's restaurant in North Aurora. But after police tracked down the car in which the boy was seen, it turned out the boy was not Timothy. In 2014, a woman in Rockton, Illinois, contacted police saying she saw a boy that resembled Timothy at her garage sale. It remains unclear if the boy the woman saw was in fact Timothy. On April 3, 2019, a boy appeared in Newport, Kentucky, claiming to be Timmothy Pitzen. He said he had been held hostage for 7 years by 2 individuals. He was 14 years old. On April 4th, the FBI announced that his DNA did not match Timothy's and he was not Timmothy Pitzen. The boy stated he escaped his 2 kidnappers where they were staying in a Red Roof Inn in Sharonville, Ohio. He ran across a bridge to Kentucky. This is all the complete opposite direction of where Amy traveled. Kentucky police later said the person claiming to be Timothy was actually 23-year-old Brian Michael Reaney of Medina, Ohio.
Yeah, he was running from the law or something to that effect, or he was hiding from the police. But they did their due diligence. They checked the Red Roof Inn. They found no surveillance, no check-in of anyone else. No one had seen anybody there resembling what he was describing. Also, if you see his picture, he could get away for 18 or 19, not 14.
Right.
This would have been a very well-developed 14-year-old kid. So police kind of knew that right off the bat. So, Lauren, let's talk about some theories, like what happened to Timothy. Now, it's obviously the first thing that comes to mind is Amy killed Timothy. I mean, it is possible that her mental illness could have led her to believe that she was doing what was best for him. I mean, we have seen these types of murders in the past where if he loses me, he's going to need help, or he's not going to be able to live right without me. You can't have him. I don't know. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Maybe I'm wrong.
Yeah.
The listeners probably have no idea what I'm talking about. But, I mean, this theory, to me, honestly, is hard to grasp, as Amy has no history of violence. I mean, except herself. She's self-harmed. And if, in fact, she did kill Timothy, where's the body? I mean, they've tracked her phone and the iPads. They've checked every area they could possibly check. There's no body. Now, Amy's sister, Kara Jacobs, and Timothy's father, Jim, emphatically reject the theory that the situation may have been a murder-suicide. Not for 1 second did I think Timothy was endangered, said Jacobs. It never occurred to me. I'm going to put some emphasis on the fact that Jim does not believe that Amy could have harmed Timothy. Therefore, I don't believe that she has, although it's tough to not feel that way based on the circumstances that we're faced with.
Well, another theory is that she left him to live with someone else, or there was an illegal adoption. She did make 2 separate visits to the area alone. Was she meeting with someone to finalize these plans? The issue here is she's within a radius where eventually a child would be recognized, you would think, unless the person she met immediately left the area.
Well, one thing to note here is when you say that, someone would know if they saw Timothy, they would know. Well, the person who found her phone, remember she threw behind the building, the grain building?
Yeah.
The person who found the phone, when they finally got it charged up and turned on, they saw pictures of Timothy and Amy on them. They knew right away what it was, and they turned the phone over to police. So to give you some idea that, yeah, people knew this case. They knew this disappearance, and they knew this family was missing. So when they found the pictures, they turned it over to police.
So if Amy had handed Timothy over to someone, that person must have fled the area.
You would think, because in the immediate area, someone would notice.
There was no mention of bank accounts and if there was any money missing. There was no mention of money found in the hotel room. You would think that she would either have to pay someone to take her child and keep it a secret, or someone paid her for Timothy.
Well, one thing, too, that law enforcement stated was that there were no presence of any of the items that she had purchased in the trip. So there was like some clothes. There was no clothes for Timothy that were found in the hotel room or in the van anywhere in the area. The toothbrush, I guess there was a toothbrush that was purchased. They found receipts and all these items. They did their research. So all the things that she had purchased along the way for Timothy were not to be found with her or the van. So it's like that, that leads you to believe that he is missing and he's still out there somewhere because these items were not with her.
Kara Jacobs, Amy's sister, believes that Timothy was handed off to another family in Iowa. Now, as mentioned earlier, the family spent a lot of time in Dubuque, Iowa, and Amy had connections there. At that time, there may have been a thriving underground network for rehoming children. In Amy's suicide note, she claimed that she had given Timothy away to someone who loved him and would care for him, but chillingly warned that he'd never be found. I believe it was some sort of illegal adoption arrangement. I think she planned the whole thing out very well and had been planning it for a very long time. Timothy's aunt, Jen West, told the U.S. Sun in May of 2022.
And one thing to keep in mind, too, is remember I said it's important to note that what the last thing she purchased at the grocery store, there were 3 letters that were written, and they were all written out on the notebook paper, utilizing the pen she purchased and the envelope. They were put in the envelopes. So she knew when she went to the grocery store what she was about to do. So at that point, they know, or at least I feel, that she had no claim to Timothy at that point. He was already gone, handed over, or whatever has happened that was done. And she was headed to the hotel room to write these notes and to take her own life. So we have to kind of go through the whole realm of things. And I guess at one point they believed that the Amish Mennonite community had taken in Timothy. See, the gene pool of these groups had reportedly been stunted due to limited selection. So these types of adoptions are a good way to get, quote, fresh genes into the mix. Now, most articles we found claim they were adopting mostly infants. However, if there was a family that was unable to conceive, maybe they would consider taking a 6-year-old child. And investigators did take flyers into the Amish communities to see if anyone had seen or heard from Amy or Timothy or knew of anything, but they did feel comfortable that Timothy had never been within the community at all. Of course, we have to look into a cult. So Endeavor Academy in Wisconsin Dells, which is where the Kalahari Resort that they stopped at is. There is a compound about a mile down the road called the Wilderness. Now, this community, it lists itself as an international school of enlightenment and also a seminary. They have affiliate centers in Poland, Germany, the Netherlands, Spain, Colombia, Ecuador, Venezuela, and Mexico. So this is not a small group. This is a large group. Now, over the years, former members have made public allegations of cult-like behaviors within the group. So had Timothy been handed over to this particular group, they have connections in a lot of other countries that Timothy could have gone to, in which case they're not going to see the flyers. They're not going to know of Timothy Pitzen.
That's what I'm saying. If Amy had passed Timothy off to anyone in this particular group or cult, if you will, he could have been shipped to Poland, Germany, the Netherlands. I mean, he could be anywhere.
Yeah, the only thing that gets me is what you mentioned earlier, and we kind of both hit on, is the fact that he is old enough to know what's going on. So if in fact he were to get to a different area, would he understand what was going on? Would he know that his name has changed? Obviously, I mean, you would think that if he's in an environment that is a great environment that he really loved or enjoyed, that maybe he just, would grow with that. But you would think that at some point he'd be old enough at this point to
Where's my mom and dad?
Exactly. And you're going to hit, I hate myself because I'm a little rusty right now with the holidays and stuff, things going on that we just got through. I cannot think of the TV show, The Case, where he says, I think my name is Stephen. Remember, he comes in and he says, I know my name is Stephen. You would think that a scenario like that would happen. That was the Stainer?
Yes.
That case.
Yes.
So,
Stephen Stainer.
Exactly. So remember he said, I know my name is Stephen?
Yes.
So I feel like this would happen in this case. If in fact he was able to even be free. We don't know. Remember, Stephen was taken along and kind of went with it the whole time. And then finally, when they got tired of him and then he kind of came back, he left and came back and said, I know my name is Stephen. You just hope that this is a case where that's going to happen.
Well, by all accounts, Amy was a wonderful and loving mother, and not a single person in her circle believes that she could have harmed Timothy in any way. So the question we're left with is, where is he?
Well, as you mentioned earlier, this case does share that eerie resemblance to the Trenton Duckett case. And that was from Leesburg, Florida. We covered that back when we were only doing Florida stuff. And that was in 2006. But see, she had taken Trenton, who was 2 years old, and traveled to numerous locations. So there's some similarities there. But she later claimed that someone had broken into her apartment and abducted him. So he was there, but there were two people that were with her that night that claimed that they hadn't seen Trenton at all that evening.
Right.
Now, this case, if you guys remember, really attracted heavy media attention when she committed suicide, but that was only after she appeared on Nancy Grace, and Nancy Grace went after her, trying to find out where Trenton was. Now, we did, remember when we interviewed Trenton's father, and he has some theories, but he has no idea where Trenton may be. This case is very similar, but very different because remember, Melinda Duckett, unlike Amy, sort of had a history of being somewhat abusive or harmful to Trenton.
Yes.
Whereas, and Jim has no thoughts that Amy could have hurt their son.
Yeah, there's nobody that believes Amy would have hurt Timothy.
And me, it breaks my heart to consider the fact that maybe that is what they feel to hold on to hope. But keep in mind, they were potentially looking at a divorce, and she was fearful that she was going to lose Timothy. So again, it could have been that if I can't have him, no one can sort of attitude that maybe she took. And maybe that's why she took her own life, because she felt like, I did this horrible thing. I spent time with him. I did this horrible thing, but now I'm just going to take my life. But why would you say that he's mine? I can do what I want. But then in another breath, write a note saying that he's with some unnamed family.
See, now there's something that I haven't seen mentioned in any reports or any of the research I did, but it's just something that I think may have happened. I think maybe Amy had some sort of psychotic break. Now, they mentioned the day before that she was having a vertigo attack. I don't know exactly why she wasn't walking right or whatever the case may be, but she could have had she has a history of mental illness. She could have had some sort of psychotic break and completely lost touch with reality. That's my thought. And when you completely lose touch with reality, then anything's possible. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, that's something I think that needs to be considered, and I was a little shocked that I didn't find any information about the possibility that may have happened. Yeah. So I just felt like that needed to be included, and I am no doctor, I am no psychiatrist, psychologist, or anything. I'm just going by what I know about mental health and what I've seen in my own personal experience that can happen at some time.
Yeah, and you've got to give props to the family and Jim 100%, because Jim, regardless of what struggles they had, he felt that he can still trust that his wife was, kept the child safe, kept the, love to the child. So to me, he would know her best. So if she had a mental break, you would have to think that she had those before, and maybe something would have happened that she would have been harmful to either Jim or to Timothy. So I don't know. I mean, I kind of hit either way on that one.
Right.
So if you know someone that is having a mental health issue or is having problems with mental health, don't hesitate to call for somebody help. There is a mental health helpline. It's 1-800-662-HELP. If you need help or you know someone that does, it's a 24/7, 365. You can call them and talk to them and get some sort of guidance as to where to go next. So, again, it's 1-800-662-HELP. So, Lauren, is there anything else you want to kind of discuss on this case?
Ken, I just want to put this out there that if anybody has any knowledge of the whereabouts of Timmothy Pitzen, they're asked to call the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children at 1-800-THE-LOST. That's 1-800-843-5678, or the Aurora Police Department Timmothy Pitzen tip line at 630-256-5516. Again, that's 630-256-5516.
So please, if you have something, whatever it is, give them a call. Also, one thing that I love about the true crime community is when they listen to a case and they get involved, they get the computers on, they go watch videos, they absorb all the information they can possibly find. And sometimes you might see something that someone else missed. So feel free to dig into this case, because we're talking about a child who now is going to be 18 years old.
Yeah.
I guess not really a child much anymore, but 18 years old. So it's possible, putting the stuff out there on the air and looking into things. Sometimes somebody hears something and it's like, oh, it reminds me so much of Unsolved Mysteries and how you used to get the updates. We aired this and then the neighbor called.
Yeah.
This is what you hope for in this case, because I would really love for there to be good news about Timothy, and really love for Jim to be reunited with his son.
And we will be posting, they've done age progression photos of Timothy, so we'll definitely be posting those on our social medias. And I guess that's going to be it for tonight, Ken.
All right, Lauren. Well, that's going to be it, everybody. Thank you, everyone.
Again, if you'd like to support the show, please subscribe to our Patreon at patreon.com/Palmahawk Media. That's PALMAHAWK Media.
Be sure to check out our website for links to all of our social media, our merch store, and much, much more.
Please make sure to subscribe to the show on whatever platform you're listening, and rate and review us. This really helps us branch out and reach a wider audience.
And as always, thank you very much for listening
to Paradise After Dark.
Dark, 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 dark.